Whoa, they're so powerful. Good. What's up, guys? All Pencil here, and here we are to talk about how the seven deadly, I guess, like, the five deadly, we've only seen three, the three deadly sins. Like, we've only seen three in action, but the seven deadly sins in 4 Nights of the have not been power crept, and why that is fantastic for the narrative, for the characters themselves, and it got a little bit iffy for power scaling. Well, I mean, it's still good, in my opinion, for power scaling, but it's just a little bit nebulous. But there's so many things we do, in fact, have to talk about, so let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. What's up, guys? All the Pencil here. Fun fact, I do have it on me, and keep it on me at all times. And fun fact, Meliodas of the 7 deadly sins does, in fact, please, work with me. Yeah! Have it on him, and keep it on him at all times. You know what I'm talking about? And obviously, we're not going to talk about him first because he appears second and has his showing. So why do I worry about cross-series power creep? Very specifically, sequel power creep. Mainly because it's something that I've seen done. I'm not even going to say poorly. I'm just going to say in a way I didn't like in other series. Obviously, the main example is Boruto. I think the main example is Boruto. I'm not going to go too in-depth on that because, you know, I'm not sure how far part 1 ended in the anime, I think. But regardless, Boruto is the other main sequel series that kind of, in my opinion, set the precedent that in, like, Dragon Ball Super, and I guess, legally speaking, Dragon Ball Z itself, in terms of the power creep and power scaling from the original series to the sequel series. One of my main things with Boruto Naruto Next Generations, now Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, is that it kind of had this issue, this problem, where our characters from the original series were so overwhelmingly powerful in comparison to our new cast of characters that Kishimoto and Ikimoto had to do something about it. Either A, they had to make it so that Naruto and Sasuke were weaker, so that the rest of the more modern cast can catch up to them faster, and or they had to make antagonists strong enough that they would bully the current top tiers, which were Naruto and Sasuke, and then forcefully ramp up the modern generation to catch up to them. They sort of ended up doing a middle compromise with how Naruto and Sasuke were treated by the massive nerfs they got, whether it be the loss of Kurama or the loss of the Rinnegan. The reason this it's a little bit awkward for me, and the reason I was worried about it for 7 Deadly Sins is because 7 Deadly Sins ended off in a very similar place. Notably, the 7 Deadly Sins were drastically overpowered, like to the point where, even with the loss of 2 of their members, Full Wings King, post-Purgatory Core Troops Bond, post-True Magic Purgatory, Demon King Meliodas, and even Diane were kind of monsters, and Gother's always kind of been a hacks beast. So one of the main concerns I had going into 4 Nights was like, how are we going to tackle the power creep problem? Because once again, there were 2 ways that NAKABA could have taken it, at least in my mind at the time when 4 Nights first started serializing, and it was revealed that we weren't going to be following the kids of any of the previous cast members, as far as we knew at the time. Lancelot was right there the entire time. But the way it happened to me is I was thinking that, okay, either the new villain cast is going to be isolated from the old cast of characters for the most part, and thusly we won't have to worry about any cross-verse power scaling for a long while until the old cast gets reintroduced, and or the old cast is going to get nerfed or off-screen. Maybe both. That is what I feared, especially considering if you go back towards the end of 7 Deadly Sins, you'll notice that NAKABA, most likely in preparation for 4 Nights, did add a lot of some hard, some soft nerfs to certain characters. The biggest example, the one that I stand on business for to this day, is my boy Bond. Bro came out post-Purgatory, scrumdiddlyumptious, all juicy, fresh, and stronger than ever before. And what did NAKABA immediately do? Not, 5 chapters after he got out? Boom! Took the immortality away. Bond's most defining trait, inarguably, right? Up until that point, and kind of to the point beyond that, he was Bond the Undead. Sure, he was notorious as a thief, his magic was snatch, all that's cool and all, but especially after, I'd say, Season 1, early Season 2, pre-Galen v. Escanor fight, all of Bond's stuff post that was about his immortality. His power growth was based on his immortality. His entire character and his character strength was wrapped around his immortality. But since NAKABA bumped him up the power scale so much and was going to give him his sacred treasure back, he hard nerfed him. That is a hard nerf, in my opinion, not a soft nerf. We're going to cover a soft nerf in a second, but the thing with this hard nerf is that it made Bond mortal. And making Bond mortal meant that Bond could die. And if Bond could die, that meant there was danger reinserted, even though he got exponentially more powerful in comparison to himself before he went into purgatory. Another just flat out hard nerf that may be turned into a soft nerf. Once again, we don't exactly know the nature of this hard nerf, soft nerf, whatever you want to call it. Meliodas' loss of true magic scared me. I've already made whole videos talking about how I think true magic just ended up being a plot device that honestly, either you keep it and you work around it for the sequel series, like NAKABA has found ways to do, or you just don't introduce it at all. Don't introduce it at all, or just don't introduce it at all. Mainly because you have to get rid of it. If you're going to make Mel that strong, you kind of have to get rid of it. And the way that true magic was slid in to the main narrative, towards the back half of it. Really, I can't even say the back half, like the back third or the back quarter of the narrative, as a plot device to erase the commandments and erase the curses, since NAKABA didn't seem to be able to come up with a more organic way to do that. He introduced it, made Meliodas super duper buff, and then immediately hard nerfed him. Deleted the form. Had Meliodas literally throw all the power away to destroy the commandments. That is another hard nerf. And it kind of, like, at least for me, I wasn't sure that Four Knights was going to be a thing towards the end of Seven Deadly Sins serialization. I just didn't. Once again, you're looking at a guy who didn't know too much about Arthurian mythology, and to this day still does not know that much about Arthurian mythology. So Seven Deadly Sins just being a prequel never even came to my mind. So even still, towards the end, with all these hard and soft nerfs happening, I was like, there's probably set up for something else. And that's why my opinions on the whole chaos stuff towards the end of the series have kind of shifted a bit, looking at it in retrospect. Once again, that's another video for another time. The main point is that Meliodas got a hard nerf. His peak of power was solidly, at least for now. A lot of people are theorizing that true magic may come back. It may be a regenerating magic thing. I don't know. Meliodas can still exist in the real world, and if he couldn't even do that with true magic, it's kind of weird. But essentially, NAKABA straight up whipped out Lost Fate, and it was like, I know, and hard cut true magic from the plot, because Mel would be a bit too powerful. Another character who got a soft nerf rather than a hard nerf like Mel and Bond was King. Notably, when King first got full wings, and he revealed that he couldn't just have one, he couldn't just have two, he couldn't even just have three, he could have 4 whole spirit spears out. All the King fans, myself included, were going absolutely boo-hoo bonkers. We were like, yes, King is cooking. Yes, he's going to be one of the mightiest. Yes. And then NAKABA, he didn't even give the courtesy of giving King a soft nerf in narrative. He gave one soft nerf in narrative, but it's kind of irrelevant considering how King usually fights. But the in-narrative soft nerf and the out-of-narrative soft nerf was this. Every time King splits up the spirit spear, it loses efficacy. It gets weaker. Why? Like once again, why are you doing this? Why are you slapping a soft nerf on him like that? When realistically, King, by EOS, he's not even a top 3 sin. He's definitely top 5, like he's the 4th strongest. But still, he's not a top 3 sin. But no, even still, he had to get that hard nerf. They had to drop him off just like that. And once again, unless I missed a recent Q&A statement or nothing, that has not been retconned. King's spears do get weaker when he makes more of them. So one of the main perks he got from being Full Wings King, one, the transformation and the power boost. And that's another, now I think about it, that's another soft nerf that we're going to have to talk about. But the main thing with the spirit spears, his main form of attack getting weaker the more he splits it, means his options are still going to be forcefully limited, mostly down to 1, if he wants to use his full power. Speaking of his full power, look at King in general. Bro went from, I'm Himothy, I'm Kingothy, look at me with my beautiful full-wing dual butterfly self built like Gloxinia. Oh, BT dubs, it's not permanent. By the way, King will revert to his smaller, more marketable self if the need calls for it, aka he's running low on magic. So Full Wings King isn't really King, it's like a transformation of Kings. It's more like a demon mark or a assault mode, less than an actual state of being like every fairy king before him. I know there's only 2, but still, Gloxinia nor Dahlia, whether they've run out of magic or are on the verge of running out of magic or are getting beat up, neither of them reverted to a smaller wing state. Literally just a smaller state in general. Like, Full Wings King is like a whole adult, while regular tiny baby wings king is like a mid-teenager or something like that. He looks barely older than 16, if he's even 16. So that's another kind of, I mean, is that even really a soft nerf? That may qualify as a hard nerf, telling us that his power is not finite. He cannot stay in that amp state forever. He will shrink down. Another just nerf, just slide on these characters. And of course, you want to know who got the fattest and hardest nerf of our main powerhouse sins? It's Escanor. You want to know how hard his nerf was? He died. Like, straight up. That was his nerf. Bro he leaked to arguably, well, I don't even think it's arguably. I've heard contentions for stuff like Bond and stuff like that, but realistically, based off his feats, Final Shine, the one ultimate Escanor, is the second strongest sin. A massive leap in power, especially considering how hard he had gotten power crept. Like, it was crazy how hard he got power crept. But no, NAKABA smacked him all the way back up to number 2, only to immediately smack that boy right down by executing him. So, my biggest fear going into 4 nights was that, okay, we are consistently nerfing this. If you're wondering what soft nerf Merlin got, she doesn't exist. Like, she's just gone. Like, she switched sides. She went to Arthur's side, and now within the current narrative of 4 nights, she just doesn't exist. Like, we have no idea where she is. She's somewhat mentioned, like, in chapter 1 by Varghese as, like, a witch living in a mountain or something like that, but, like, we haven't actually seen Merlin in the current narrative. It's been like 3 years of publication, and we still have not seen her. So that's an entirely separate thing. There's her soft nerf. Gowther, the weird thing about Gowther is Gowther, despite getting a buff, he's never really like, it's hard to soft nerf or even hard nerf Gowther. Because like, he's kind of had the same kit for the entire series. He's the only, is that true? Outside of King, he's the only, well, now I think about it, even King kind of qualifies as someone who evolved his sacred treasure. He's the only sin to have started with his sacred treasure and kept it the exact same outside of Merlin. It's him and Merlin. They're the only two that, I guess Escanor too, but then again, he loses his sacred treasure and he also dies. But essentially, Gowther has had twin bow hair since he was introduced. He's gotten some new techniques with it, but overall, he kind of never got a soft nerf. His soft nerf was a universal character thing. He doesn't punch very hard, and like his speed feats are kind of weird. So Gowther, very powerful character, but not on the level of any of the top 4 sins, at least not in my opinion. And Diane's soft nerf is that she never got buffed. She needs to Trolls dance up. The Millie base Diane in Cursed by Light does damage the Supreme Deity with some rocks. So there you go. But once again, the fact that she needs to dance up into her full power state rather than, just flicker it on like Meliodas, or just be constantly at full power like Bond, or even flicker it on like King, that's a nerf in of itself. So going into 4 nights, I do all this preamble and talking about all this hard nerfing, soft nerfing, how NAKABA was sort of leading into the sequel. I was very worried that the sins were gonna get jobbed. Because like the thing is, right, when you're introducing a new cast of characters, especially a cast of characters that are the children of the previous cast of characters, I'm looking at Tristan, I'm looking at Lancelot, and that's it. I'm wondering like, how are you going to make the kid shine if mommy and daddy are still running about? How do you do that? How are you going to make Tristan, the son of Meliodas and Elizabeth, look almighty and stuff like that if you have the strongest demon to ever exist, and arguably the strongest goddess to ever exist, still chilling right behind him, patting him on the back? How are you going to make Lancelot, the strongest of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse, look like Timothy when you got, I'm not gonna glaze a lane. I'm sorry, what was her best feat? Like low diff and some red demons? Like, come on, I could low diff a red, I'm lying, red demons are boundless. But with that being the case, how are you going to have the son of the Fox, son of Greed, really show out like that when the Fox, son of Greed is still him? How do you do that? Oh, my thought process was, oh, you just hard nerf them. You just hard nerf and soft nerf some of them so the kids will look better. But NAKABA decided to take, honestly, kind of the opposite approach in a roundabout way, based on the lack of information we currently have about the state of Camelot and Arthur and stuff like that. Inversely, NAKABA took some pieces of what Boruto did by introducing antagonists who are more around the level of our current cast, if some not beneath the level of our current cast, looking at Lancelot being an extreme powerhouse. And he ended up keeping that level of antagonist cast, yet still having the big boss in the background. And by doing that, he kind of got to compromise and have the best of both worlds. Because our main cast has their set of antagonists. They have the Four Perils. They have the regular Camelot Knights. They have all those people who they've been running into and have been progressively getting stronger to the point where now the main cast and crew is mostly, like, I think it's kind of hard confirmed a majority of the cast and crew is at least near commandment level, if not characters like our titular Four Knights, and Lancelot being drastically above it, and Percy, the weakest of the Four Knights for the longest time, and may still be, being relatively drastically above it to this point, whether it be Tristan literally being able to low diff a fuse commandment tier fighter, and once again, Gawain being able to go relative to a chaos commandment. You have those antagonists, but then you have characters like Arthur who are very specifically built for the old series antagonists, and I think that works better than I could have ever expected, because one of the things that power creeping the original cast of a series can do is it can make any of their feats and accomplishments in the previous series seem less impressive, less amazing, less extravagant. It can hurt a reread. One of the biggest things I was worrying about when Tristan lunged up at Arthur when he first appeared, I was like, oh no, is DM Tristan really gonna start putting the paws on Arthur like that? Is that really gonna transpire? Are we gonna have like end of series Meliodas looking like fodder next to a 16-year-old I can't even control demon mode kid? No. What do we have? We had Arthur smacking that man, knocking him away like an afterthought. Percy, our MC, body bag. We didn't even see him get hit. Gawain, knocked out. Lancelot, we'll talk about Lancelot. But the thing is, we then had Meliodas come in, and Meliodas everywhere. He covered the entire area in little Meliodases. He tried to give Tristan a whole bunch of siblings by having him go relative with Chaos King Arthur. That is how you bring in the original cast of characters. You keep their legacy and their raw amount of power, and you let them still be cool alongside their their new cast that is meant to be the sequel and the follow-up to them. The Four Knights do not suffer because the Seven Deadly Sins exist, and the Seven Deadly Sins, that's kind of weird. How do I phrase this? The Four Knights do not suffer in spite of the Seven Deadly Sins, and the Seven Deadly Sins do not suffer in spite of the Four Knights. They are complements to each other. They allow for different levels of tiering within the narrative and allow for different levels of stakes to be added to certain battles when they appear. And I think that's perfect. Once again, going all the way back to Gother's reintroduction. He's the first Sin we properly get to meet within Four Knights of the Apocalypse around the mid-30s. We meet Gother relatively quickly. We don't meet another Sin for about 40-ish chapters after Gother, because we have the whole running away from the Dark Talisman squad, and then we get into Meliodas' reintroduction in Camelot, and then we get into Meliodas' fight reintroduction around the 70s, and then we wait another 60 chapters for Bond to show up and really start cooking. But for Gother, the first Sin to be reintroduced, there's not a single aspect of his overwhelming power, danger, and fear that is compromised in spite of the fact that he's working alongside our main cast. We see this by the fact that he never gets touched. Not a single time. You have a character like Ardbeg getting speared. I was trying to make a joke. I couldn't even think, but he just got speared through the chest. Meanwhile, Gother's casually dodging about. You have Gother long range and pulling out the twin bow hair and launching it out, executing, slaughtering Chaos Knights from a distance. You have Gother being responsible for an entire village of demons. Gother's magic even evolving over the time period to where his illusions cover a massive scale and manipulate the perception of multiple people without any injection of light. Gother, if anything, has only gotten more adept and more powerful, and yet you still have the antagonist tiers for our current cast. Admittedly, Lancelot was removed from the narrative, but every time Sin was introduced in the narrative, or Sin's entire lifespan, was very specifically meant to suppress Lancelot and his overall level of power. But for Percy, he did have the big old doggo. For Donnie and Annostians, they did have Ardbeg himself. There was still the level of power that was being established, and yet the gap that exists between their level of power and the Sin's level of power is clearly shown. Clearly shown their level of efficacy and dedication is just different, and that works. It adds layers to the narrative. Once again, it adds those tiers of importance and the tiers of scale that you're going to get. Where you do have our important battles, every single battle that the kids partake in part 1 is still super duper necessary for their own development, their own growth. And you even see this when we get to the DM World arc, and they have people referencing previous iterations of characters that have shown up before and tailoring situations based on how the kids handled the situation beforehand with Lancelot's training. So you have that. And then once again, it ramps up to Leonis. The thing I was worried about is that we got Mel back. We do have Mel. How are we gonna do Mel? You know, he got nerfed. He got hard nerfed. He lost the pinnacle of his power. Who knows what's going to happen? Arthur could come in and load diff him at any moment. You can literally go back to a lot of my old reviews and you can hear the fear in my voice as I worry that my son, my boy, Meliodas, is going to get slaughtered by Arthur. But no, what does NAKABA do? He builds in that set tier of antagonists for our current cast. He gives them the Chaos Commandments, which allows them all to while out. It's mainly a 4 nights kind of group effort, notably due to how much happens in the Leonis arc, the introduction of the Tristan platoon, the combat between the Tristan platoon and the Percy platoon, the whole reintroduction of Meliodas and reintroduction of Elizabeth and stuff like that. A lot happens there. Once again, the tiers of importance and the tiers of power are established and pretty much locked in. Lancelot's the only guy who kind of fluctuates, but even then, Lancelot, just due to his raw level of power, is always set up as a higher tier than the rest of the crew, and that stays consistent, and that's perfect. Meliodas is still powerful. He is. The only reason Arthur was about to do anything to him, realistically, was because Tristan was quite literally getting in the way and or spazzing. And thusly, you get to keep Meliodas being the almighty, super powerful, crazy guy, but at the same time, you don't compromise Tristan's strength, Tristan's integrity, or Meliodas' strength and Meliodas' integrity. And that's how you reincorporate characters. That's how you allow them to still be powerful. And once again, in a similar vein to Gother, it feels like Mel has only gotten stronger. Bro saw the Chaos King himself, someone who in the end of Seven Deadly Sins, with barely any understanding of his powers, was able to go head-to-head and defeat Chaos Kath. And who pulls up to fight this Arthur? Base Mel. Base with a capital B, Mel, comes in and starts schmollywopping broski. Smacking him up down. Left, right, no cheat code. And that's good. When he activates Demon Mark, he gets the appropriate power up and does even more to Arthur. Once again, the levels of power are being established. And I'll finish why all this is so important in the grand scheme of the narrative after I cover Big Daddy Bon. Now, Bon has only had a proper, I'd say, 2 chapters in the narrative so far. Well, I guess legally speaking, kind of? I think it's only 2 that he's probably been reintroduced and shown. But what does he do? By crossing that barrier into the lower tier of the cast members and showing why these 2 levels are separated in the first place, he mollywops Ironside. Bullies Ironside. Ironside goes his hardest that we've ever seen in the entire manga, mainly because he has like 2 fights and they're like all against children or old men. But we see Ironside go his absolute hardest. And Nakaba easily could have made Bon job here. It was not a simple idea. Was not a complex idea, rather. It would be so easy to have Ironside actually be relative to Bond, but no, Nakaba is sticking to his chops and making it so that the cast and crew of the original series are not just powerful, but they may be stronger than ever before, and they're just as dangerous as they were then to our current cast of antagonists, and they're even scaring Arthur, our current big bad, our current final boss, just because of how powerful they are. And this, in my opinion, is perfect. It keeps the benefits of both without sacrificing either. The whole new cast and crew has their moments, has their fights, has their antagonists that make sense within the context of the previous narrative about how humans are good, they're diverse, but overall their power is and all that. That's beautiful. And at the same time, you do have that clear establishment that the Sin tier is on top. It is the pinnacle. It is the peak. It is the apex where all should strive to reach, essentially. And that's perfect too. Because it does everything. It protects the legacy and the impact of both sets of characters. It gives the Sins more to do. And finally, I think a big reason why the power creep for 4 Knights for the original Seven Deadly Sins has worked so well, and it hasn't had to be compromised like other series had to compromise it. The Sins are landlocked for the most part. The only one who could arguably be super mobile is Gother, and maybe like Bond if he moves at top speed, but notably, they're locked. We see this at the start of part 2. They're locked to Benwick. They're locked to Leonis. They're locked to the Demon Village. They're locked to the Fairy Realm and or the Giant Realm. There's so much that they could do if they could leave, but they literally can't because they know the moment they do, Arthur's swooping in. And that's how you do it, in my opinion. That's how you balance a story around original characters from the original series that are seemingly too powerful for the current plot. You split it up. You segregate the plot into certain levels and factors and certain levels of high tension, and I think it makes everything all the better. However, that's what I think. That's why I think the power creep or lack thereof of the Seven Deadly Sins is handled absolutely perfectly. What do you guys think? Please let me know in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching once again. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of 4 Knights of the Apocalypse. Now, if you made it all the way to the end, if you made it all the way to the end of the outro, the password for this video, please leave the 3 deadly sins in the comment section down below. I want to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That of the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, so Connor Plays, Redwell 4765, and Greyhound. I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Igneal. I'd like to give a honka thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. And I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchio, Joaquin, Idemokami, and China Doll 09. I'd like to give a thicker than a snicker thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another thicker than a frozen jar of peanut butter thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.